2 hours had passed since our 7 p.m. reservation. My wife, Emma, hadn't just forgotten our 10th anniversary. She hadn't even checked her phone. The waiter approached me, wearing the unmistakable expression reserved for someone who had been stood up. "Mr. Carter, would you like me to wrap the ring box for you?" I glanced at the velvet box, containing the upgraded diamond she'd been hinting about for months. "No," I said, my voice cold, "but I would like to see the security footage from the staff entrance." His eyebrows rose. Emma had been coming here regularly for business lunches lately, always insisting on using the discreet side entrance because it was closer to her office. "Sir, I'm not sure. Daniel, I've been coming here for 10 years. You catered my wedding." I pulled out my phone, showing him the tracking app I'd installed last week after finding an unfamiliar receipt in her coat. "My wife is in your restaurant right now, just not with me." He hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." The security footage confirmed my worst suspicions. Emma had slipped in through the service entrance 40 minutes earlier, giggling as her so-called business partner guided her to a private dining room, his hand resting low on her back. I recognized him immediately from her company photos. Nathan James, the new VP of sales she'd been working late nights with for the past 3 months. There, in the blue room, Daniel said quietly, "It's a standing weekly reservation, usually Thursdays, but Mr. James called this morning to change it to today. Said it was a special occasion. My anniversary. They were celebrating my anniversary in the restaurant that had catered my wedding. The champagne they ordered," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Is it the same as what's on my table?" Daniel checked his tablet. "Yes, sir. Mrs. Carter always says it's her favorite." "Interesting," I replied. "She told me just last week she developed an allergy to that brand." I straightened my tie and looked him in the eye. "Daniel, I'm going to need a favor." "Of course, sir." "First, charge everything they ordered to my account. And I mean everything." He nodded, a look of understanding dawning in his eyes. "Second, I want you to deliver this to their table." I handed him the ring box. "Tell them it's compliments of the gentleman at table 12, my table. And you, sir?" I gave a thin smile. "I'll be at the bar." I want to see their faces when they realize their private celebration isn't so private anymore. Daniel timed it perfectly. I watched from the bar as he approached their private room, just as Nathan was pouring their second glass of my champagne. Emma was sitting far closer to him than any business dinner could justify, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. "Compliments of the gentleman at table 12, Daniel announced, placing the velvet box precisely between them. "He specifically requested you open it now." Emma's face flickered with confusion, then froze in horror as she recognized the box from the jeweler she'd been dropping hints about for months. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. "Weird," Nathan said, visibly annoyed at the interruption. "Must be a mistake." "No mistake, sir," Daniel replied smoothly. Mr. Carter was very specific. The color drained from Emma's face. "Tom, my husband is here." "At table 12, madam," Daniel said politely, "though I believe he's moved to the bar now. He thought you might prefer the view from the bar when you open his anniversary gift." Nathan straightened his tie nervously. "Anniversary?" "Yes, sir. 10 years today. We catered the wedding, actually," Daniel said. "Mrs. Carter always requests the same champagne. She says it reminds her of their first toast as husband and wife." Emma's hands trembled as she opened the box. Instead of the diamond upgrade she'd been hinting about, she found a USB drive containing their wedding video and a stack of incriminating photos. Pictures of her and Nathan entering various hotels, timestamps from supposed business dinners, and credit card statements showing purchases she thought she'd hidden. "Oh, and Mrs. Carter," Daniel added, "your husband asked me to remind you that your mother's birthday dinner is still on for Saturday. Though he mentioned the guest list might need adjusting." I watched Emma's face crumble as the implications sank in. Her mother adored me and was always bragging about her perfect son-in-law. Learning about the affair, especially on our anniversary, would devastate her. especially knowing Emma had skipped our dinner to be with her lover. Nathan tried to salvage the situation. "Look, this is just a business dinner." "Of course, sir," Daniel interrupted, his voice smooth. "Though our records show you've had this business dinner every Thursday for the past 3 months. Always with the same champagne. Always on Mr. Carter's corporate account." Emma's face twisted in shock as she turned to Nathan. "You've been charging our dates to his company card." I stepped forward from the shadows. "Actually," I said, "he's been charging everything to my account. The hotels, too. Amazing what corporate expense tracking software can uncover these days." Emma flinched like she'd been slapped. "James, I can explain. The weekly hotel meetings? The champagne you're suddenly allergic to? Or maybe how you forgot our anniversary to dine with my biggest client." Nathan stood up, trying to puff out his chest. "Now, wait a minute." "Sit down, Nathan," I snapped, "unless you'd like me to call your wife. I'm sure she'd love to know how you've been spending the consulting fees my company pays you." The private dining room had gone eerily silent. Nathan sank back into his chair, his earlier confidence shattered. Emma sat frozen, staring at the damning photos as her carefully constructed world fell apart around her, designer dress and all. "The one I realized I'd probably paid for. How long have you known?" she whispered. "Long enough to get everything documented, including the interesting transfers from our joint account to your new private one." I turned to Nathan, "The one you convinced her to open for your future together." Nathan's face went pale. "You can't prove." "Actually, I can. Banking records are fascinating, especially when your accomplice still uses your birthday as her password. The transfers align perfectly with your Thursday meetings. Almost like, oh, I don't know, you were charging her for your time." Emma's head snapped up. "What transfers?" I smiled coldly. "Oh, he didn't tell you? Why don't you show her your phone, Nathan? Let her see where her retirement savings really went." "He said it was for our future home," Emma protested weakly. "The only thing he's been investing in," I said, "is his gambling debt. Which, by the way, is why he's been charging everything to my corporate account. His credit cards were maxed out months ago." Daniel reappeared with a folder. "The receipts you requested, Mr. Carter. All charges to your account over the past 6 months." Emma snatched the folder before Nathan could stop her. Her face crumpled as she scanned the evidence. Hotel stays, expensive dinners, jewelry she thought were gifts from Nathan, all charged to my company. "You used him," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You used us." "Baby, I can explain," Nathan began. "Don't call her baby." I cut in. "She's still my wife. For about," I checked my watch, 12 more hours. "My lawyer files the papers first thing tomorrow." "Lawyer?" Emma paled further. "James, please. We can work this out. Like how you worked out draining our accounts. Or how about the credit card you took out in my name?" Nathan tried to interject again. "That was her idea." "Sit down," I snapped. "I'm not finished." I leaned closer. "The police will want to talk to both of you about that credit card. Identity theft is serious. Almost as serious as embezzling from a publicly traded company." They both went ashen. "That's right," I continued. "The SEC is very interested in how a VP of sales has been manipulating contracts to inflate his commission. Almost as interested as they are in the insider trading you convinced my wife to help you with." Emma started sobbing. "I didn't know." "You didn't know Nathan was using company information you gave him to make illegal trades." I leaned back. "The evidence suggests otherwise. Those texts you thought you deleted? Cloud backups are wonderful things." Nathan finally broke. "Look, we can make a deal. Like the deal you made with my wife. The one where she empties our accounts while you bleed my company dry." I placed a USB drive on the table. "Everything's already been sent to the SEC. And Nathan, your wife got copies too. All of them." The next 24 hours were a whirlwind. Nathan was arrested before he could finish his creme brulee. Turns out there was already a warrant out for securities fraud. The SEC had been waiting for more evidence, which I gladly provided. Emma tried damage control, calling everyone she could think of, but it was too late. Her version of events didn't change anything. Unfortunately for her, I'd spent weeks preparing. Her family already had copies of everything. The photos, bank statements, and text messages discussing how to hide their affair from clueless James. Is it true? Her mother demanded when Ashley showed up at their house that night. You missed your anniversary dinner to be with that criminal? Ashley was still trying to explain when her father arrived with more bad news. The family trust you were set to inherit, he said flatly. It has a morality clause. Your grandfather was adamant about protecting the family's reputation. You're cut off. The trust committee voted unanimously after seeing the evidence. Stealing from your husband, insider trading, identity theft. What were you thinking? Daddy, please. Don't daddy me. You're 40 years old, not 14. You made these choices, and now you'll live with the consequences. Marcus's wife, Claire, was just as unforgiving. She showed up at Ashley's office the next morning, tossing divorce papers onto her desk in front of the entire staff. Hope he was worth it, she said loudly, because you're both named in the lawsuit. Every penny he stole, every account he emptied. I'm coming for all of it. The company didn't wait for the SEC investigation to conclude. Ashley was escorted out that afternoon, her corporate email already disabled. Her colleagues watched in silence as she carried out her designer handbag, probably the last expensive thing she'd owned for a while. You knew, she accused when she came home to find me packing. You knew about Marcus's gambling, the stolen money. I figured it out when you started moving money from our accounts. Did you really think I wouldn't notice half our retirement savings disappearing? He said he needed it temporarily. For what? More insider trading? Or was it for the sports book he owes 6 figures to? I handed her a printout. Here's his real financial statement. The one he didn't show you while promising your dream life together. She sank onto the porch steps, staring at the numbers. This can't be right, he said. He said a lot of things, just like you did. Remember last month, when you suggested putting the house in your name for tax purposes? Guess that plan shot now that the SEC is freezing your assets. My assets? But I didn't what? Trade stocks based on insider information he got from being my client. The texts say otherwise. You too weren't very careful about discussing illegal activities over company phones. Her face crumpled as reality finally hit. What am I supposed to do now? Well, you could start by calling Marcus. Oh, wait. He's in custody. Apparently, he tried fleeing to the Caymans when he got the SEC notice. Didn't even bother warning you first. The SEC investigation revealed the full scope of their schemes. Marcus hadn't just been gambling with stolen money. He'd been running a complex fraud operation using my company's insider information. Ashley had been his unwitting accomplice, feeding him confidential data she thought would secure their future together. At his sentencing hearing, on what would have been our next anniversary, Ashley sat alone in the courtroom, watching her lover throw her under the bus in a desperate plea deal. Mrs. Carter was the mastermind, Marcus claimed. She had access to the company data. She set up the trades using accounts in her husband's name. His own lawyer corrected him tiredly. It wasn't the first time Marcus had tried shifting blame, and the judge wasn't impressed. Mr. Wheeler, the judge said, the evidence shows you've run the same scheme at 3 other companies. 3 other affairs with employees who had access to insider information. This appears to be your pattern. Ashley's face crumpled as she realized she wasn't special, just the latest in a string of women he'd manipulated for profit. The sentence was harsh. 15 years for securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering, plus full restitution. Ashley got 5 years of probation and hefty fines. Her cooperation earned her a lighter sentence, though her legal punishment felt redundant. She'd already lost everything. Her parents cut her off completely after discovering she'd tried to transfer the house into her name to shield it from the SEC. You didn't just betray your husband, her father said. You tried to steal from him, too. The divorce was quick. The prenup was ironclad. She tried arguing duress, claiming I'd force her into signing it, but the judge wasn't having it. Mrs. Carter, he said, you committed identity theft against your husband while engaging in an affair with his client. Your credibility regarding his character is compromised. Claire won her lawsuit. Every asset Ashley had left, her car, her designer wardrobe, even her precious jewelry collection, was liquidated to help pay Marcus's victims. Through mutual friends, I heard she moved back to her hometown, living in a studio apartment and working as a receptionist. The only job she could get with a fraud conviction on her record. The final twist came 6 months later. An SEC investigator called me with an update. We found Marcus's hidden offshore account, the one where he stashed his real money, she said. Guess what we discovered when we traced the transfers? Every Thursday, like clockwork, he was moving funds out of an account in your wife's name right after their business meetings. He was charging her for the affair while charging you for the hotels. Double dipping. Right to the end, I had Thomas from Le Bernardin send Ashley the final bill from our anniversary night. Her half of the champagne, the dinner she shared with Marcus, and one velvet ring box, still unused at the bottom. I included a note, happy anniversary. Hope it was worth it. The bill was returned unopened. Her new address apparently didn't accept deliveries after 6 p.m. Her apartment wasn't in the kind of neighborhood where you'd want to leave packages outside. The ring? I donated it to a charity auction benefiting victims of investment fraud. It seemed fitting. Something beautiful coming from all that betrayal. Just like our anniversary dinner, Ashley never managed to accept delivery of what she'd earned.